Okay, I think we're recording now. Good evening again, everybody. So we were already talking it in the backstage for 10 minutes yeah, for 10 minutes now. Major points that were not captured during our unrecorded discussions were number one, I will be providing written answer keys to the homeworks right after the submission deadline. It will be a password protected PDF so that only those who have submitted on time will get the password para ma-access nila. But of course, I trust you that you will not share it to your classmates who haven't answered it yet, nor that you will upload it in any website or what. So wag niyong i-upload and then yes. And then to not penalize those who will not be able to finish on time, just take your time. I want you to really work on the problems. Make sure bago kayo pumunta sa homework 2, medyo nagkaroon na kayo ng idea sa paggagawa ng homework 1. You get the hang of it. You can submit after the deadline, but your disadvantage would be you'll not have access to the answer key. I will give you the password to the answer key only after you have submitted the homework. All right? Para dun nyo pa lang para hindi kayo matempt na buksan yung answer key before submitting the homework. And for those who will be submitting on time, I'll give you 10% premium on top of your score. So kung natapos kayo ng maaga, submit nyo na siya. Kung ano man yung score nyo, ita-times ko yun ng 1.1 that will be your grade for that particular item in the homework. All right? So kung late yung number 5, so okay lang. Makakakuha, alam ba, late yung number 5 nyo, pero na-submit nyo yung number 1 on time, you'll get the premium for item number 1. Okay? I think Richard is raising his hand. Go, Richard.
Sir Neil, magandang hapon. Sir, pwede siguro mamaya kung makakapagbigay po kayo ng similar example ng paano kunin yung multiplicative inverse ng sa number 2. Kasi stuck talaga ako dun, sir.
Okay.
Nag-try na ako ng siguro 5 possible multiplicative inverses. Hindi talaga lumalabas yung multiplicative identity. Nakuha ko na po yung multiplicative identity pero stuck talaga ako sa inverse, multiplicative inverse. Thank you, sir. Mamaya.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Actually,
Thank you.
pag in-example ko yung number, problema ko lang, pag in-example ko yung pagkuha ng multiplicative inverse sa number 2, mari-reveal yung multiplicative identity na malamang pinaghirapan yung ma-compute. Alright? So probably, this is one thing that you can do, ano? Dahil hindi naman tayo computational algebra, hindi naman tayo elementary algebra, yung course natin ginagamit, you're open to use any computing software. Okay? So, halimbawa, familiar ba kayo sa mga computer algebra systems, computing softwares, or what?
Uh,
Or
Excel?
Excel? Yeah. Pero ang problema sa Excel, hindi niya kaya yung variables. Ah,
Yun
teka,
nga, sir, hindi niya kaya.
sige, siguro we can, hold on. Check ko lang yung, ang UP kasi, meron tayong access sa MATLAB. Kaya lang, hindi maganda yung MATLAB sa symbolic computations. Give me 1 minute. I'll try Wolfram Alpha. Tingnan ko kung kaya niya. Hmm. Let me, ah, hindi ko alam yung syntax sa hold on, may tina-try ako na Okay. Let me hold on. All right. So the problem, yung problem ni Richard, and probably some of you are also working on it. Number 2. So you need to show that the set R cross R. I hope you guys are familiar with R cross R. This is just the set of all ordered pairs of real numbers, right? So parang meron kang vector na, or bawal ko pang gamitin yung vector kasi hindi pa natin siya na-define. Pero yung R cross R, ano lang siya, A comma B, where A and B are both real numbers. So you have a pair, or an ordered pair of real numbers. And then addition is defined this way. The sum of ordered pair AB and ordered pair CD is the ordered pair A plus C, comma B plus D. And then multiplication is defined in this way, right? Na medyo komplikado here. R and S are fixed real numbers. So ibig sabihin si R at saka si S ay given real numbers at the beginning. R is any real number, S is any non-zero real number. They are fixed in the beginning. And then you define the product of two pairs, A, B, and C, D, to be the same, another ordered pair, pero ang first component niya ay ito, at ang second component niya ay ito. It's a good thing that Richard and probably some of you already computed the multiplicative identity. Tama ba? Na-verify nyo na yung multiplicative identity. So ang problema raw ay yung multiplicative inverse, right? Pero remember, what's the multiplicative inverse again? The multiplicative inverse is the number that, or is the element of the field that you need to multiply to another to get the identity back, right? So halimbawa, ang identity mo kunwari ay kunwari ang identity mo ay EF. So na-compute na to ni Richard kung ano yung E at saka ano si F. Nahanap niyo na yung multiplicative identity. So ibig sabihin, para mahanap yung inverse ni A comma B, kailangan computein niya, ay solve niya tong equation na to. Ang AB cross CD dapat ay equal kay E comma F. Alright? But what is AB comma CD? So kailangan niya to, i-equate niya yan dun sa multiplicative identity. And I understand the difficulty here kasi mahirap nga namang i-compute kung saan equal yung CD para itong equation to ay maging totoo. Tama? That's the thing that you tried, Richard. Tama ba?
Tama, sir. Kasi dun sa pag-equate na yun, dun sa first ordered pair na AC minus BD and then R squared plus S squared, 6 variables na kaagad yun. I mean, R and S are fixed, pero 4 variables yung ano, na ACBD eh. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, kaya hindi pala mahirap talaga siyang gawin by hand. So, I suggest, and you can do this always, sasabihin ko na lang kung kailan hindi nyo pwedeng gamitin, you can use online solvers para dun sa mga tedious computational problems. Ano? So for instance, let me just shift. I'll share my computer screen muna. Kaya ko ba siyang agawin? Okay, so I hope you're still here. Teka. Okay. Kita niyo ba yun, no? Yung screen ko? Let's see. Or hindi?
Hindi po, sir.
Hold on. Bakit? Bakit hindi nakikita yung screen ko? Kasi inagaw ko yung screen share mula sa aking okay, so it should be there in a moment. So there we go. So one particular software I'm using is Mathematica. Kaya lang kailangan niya ng license. So probably we can try. Hindi ko sure kung kaya niya. Gamitin natin yung kanyang free online version, which is Wolfram Alpha. You can use any other software that you want, or you can use ChatGPT. Pwede rin naman siya, no? Pero for instance, let us try if Wolfram Alpha, the free version, can do this, ano? So here in the text box over here, you will just write whatever you wanted to compute, right? So usually nagpo-program kasi ako sa Mathematica, so I know some of the syntax. So pwedeng ganito yung gawin niya, solve. Pag magpapasolve ako sa kanya ng equation. Actually, the nice thing about the online version is you can just type whatever you wanted to do, describe it in a nice mathematical way. Hindi kailangan naka-syntax na siya ng Mathematica. The nice thing about artificial intelligence, kaya niyang basahin yung natural language tapos i-convert siya into whatever programming syntax Wolfram Alpha or Mathematica requires. Pero siguro, halimbawa, isosolve ko yung equation na, halimbawa, ang problema ni Richard ay magkakaroon ka ng system of equation, Richard, no? So halimbawa, yung A times C minus B times D times R squared plus S squared. Tapos ito. Dapat ito ay equal kay what? Diba? Equal kay E, right? So kasi as ito times ko pa pala ito. Tama. So meron kang A times AB comma CD. At yung first component ng AB times CD ay equal kay AC minus BD times R squared plus S squared at equal siya dun sa first component ng multiplicative identity na nakuha ni Richard. I-assume ko lang na yung multiplicative identity na nakuha ko ay tawagin kong E para hindi ma-reveal yung pinaghirapan ni Richard na multiplicative identity. But if you already know, halimbawa, kung equal yan kay 1 or equal yan kay 0, you can just type in 1 or 0, right? So I'll keep it as E for now para hindi ma-reveal. Tapos magkakaroon ng system of equation kasi. So and then the second component is A times D plus B times C plus 2 times R times B times D. Dapat ito ay equal kay F, kunwari, yung second component, yung multiplicative identity. And then I will tell Wolfram Alpha that it needs to solve this system of equation for the variables, what? C and D, right? Kasi C and D yung ina-assume ko na multiplicative inverse. All right? Do you guys get it? Ito yung tinatry ko kanina na ipakita.
Yes, sir.
All right? And then let's see kung maintindihan niya. I'll press enter. Sana kaya niya. Okay, there you go. So, papakita niya yung input interpretations. So, isa-solve niya itong system na yan. You have a system of equation. You see here. And then, ang variables na hanapin niya ay si C at saka si D. Alright? And then, ito na yung mako-compute niya. Si C is this long expression here, and D is the long expression here. Right? And dito yung steps, but I don't need to see the steps. Just say in your solution that I have this equation, AC minus BD times R squared plus S squared equals E, AD plus BC plus 2RBD equals F, and then I want to solve for C and D. And using Wolfram Alpha, you got this C value and you get this D value. And that would be very much fine with me. Hindi nyo na kailangang ipakita yung solution. Sabihin nyo lang na kinompute nyo ito using Wolfram Alpha. Okay? Kasi pwede rin yung step-by-step solution eh. So you can click step-by-step solution and then di ko alam kung kakayanin niya ipakita yung step-by-step solution. There you go. Ito yung step-by-step solution pero kailangan magbayad. Huwag na tayo magbayad. Kasi sabihin nyo lang sa akin na nag-Wolfram Alpha kayo. Ito yung binigay niyang roots, then you're good. Hindi nyo na kailangan yung mahabang solution. Alright? But be careful. Dapat tama yung pinasolve nyo sa kanya. No? Alright? Is that good? So ang hanapin ko dun sa solution nyo ay more of the setup. Ikwento nyo dun sa PDF nyo, sir, alam kong ganito po yung pagsosolve ng multiplicative identity. Kailangan yung AB cross CD ay i-equate ko dun sa multiplicative identity. Alright? Ang multiplicative identity halimbawa ay E, F. Tapos gumamit po ako ng Wolfram Alpha para makompute si C at saka si D, which will give me the first and the second component respectively of the multiplicative inverse of A, B. Alright? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Thank you
Yes, sir.
po.
It's clear.
All right? So yeah, at sana mabawasan na yung ano no. Mabawasan na yung mga kailangan nyo talagang imano-mano. Kasi hindi naman yan yung ano. The reason is hindi naman yan yung star nung homework. Hindi naman yan talaga yung gusto nating gawin. We want to learn the concepts. Once you know the concept, it's just algebraic manipulation and you are not graded for your algebra skills here. So yeah. And then nandyan yung teknolohiya, bakit hindi natin siya gamitin, right? Kailangan mag-adapt tayo depende dun sa technology na available sa atin. But anyway, before you'll be able to use the computer software, what's happening in my screen, before you'll be able to use the technology or the artificial intelligence sa computer solver, kailangan nyo munang i-set up. Alright? At yun yung itetest ko sa inyo. Dapat alam nyo yung konsepto bago nyo ma-set up yung problem or ma-set up yung problem nga na ipapasa nyo dun sa solver. Right? Then I hope that will help you in some of the problems. Ano? So kasi yung iba nga tedious algebraic manipulations lang yung kailangan. Right? Actually, pwede nyo rin gamitin yung Wolfram Alpha kanina para ma-compute yung multiplicative identity. Pwede rin siya makuha para makuha yung additive identity. So, yeah. All right. So, other questions before we go to the new topic? Actually, not new topic, but we'll look at some proving exercises para naman dun sa mga problems na kailangan nyo talagang mag-prove. Ano? So, questions, other questions, concerns?
None, sir.
All right. Or hindi pa kayo nagagawa? Kailan nga yung deadline? Ang deadline ay sa Sunday nga ba?
Apo, sir.
Right. Okay. So may time pa naman. And then we'll have one more session. Either this would be on Friday or on Saturday. I'll let you know tomorrow. Meron kasi akong prior commitment ng Friday, so most likely it will be Saturday. But that will still give you time to ask me questions about the homework if you are targeting to submit it on time. So I'll just update you tomorrow about the schedule. But basically, last time we look at the definition of a field. Nakita natin ilang properties ngayon, 6 if I'm not mistaken. 6 properties that you need to check before concluding that a structure consisting of a non-empty set F together with 2 binary operations, an addition and a multiplication is a field, right? And then we look at some examples of fields. Sabi natin, usual example natin ng fields, set of rational numbers together with the usual addition and multiplication, set of all real numbers together with the usual operations, set of complex numbers together with the usual addition and multiplication of complex numbers. And then I think I flashed an example of a non-conventional multiplication for complex numbers. And then we also look at finite fields, yung Z sub P, where P is a prime. So gumawa tayo ng operation table. I think it was Z5 if I'm not mistaken. And we have seen ito yung mga example ng mga fields. Although sa totoong buhay, alam na natin yung field of real numbers. Kasi maganda yung fields kasi lahat ng properties na kailangan natin para mag-solve ng equations ay nandun na sa fields. All right. Now, let's now play a little bit on some proving exercises. Let's look at some properties of fields, specifically those written in proposition number 1, para magkaroon kayo ng idea or refresher how to prove things. All right. So let me just get a copy of the modules in my other screen para alam ko yung gusto natin improve. All right. So there we go. So let's try to prove some things here. Ano kaya magandang improve? Probably I'll just show a few and then you'll try to answer some of these, no? Kasi sa math, kapag meron kang claim of something, if you have a statement claiming the truthfulness of whatever assertion, right? Or medyo redundant, but if you have a statement, you really need to prove it. And how to prove it is that you'll use previously established facts like axioms or assumptions, previously proven theorems, propositions, lemmas, or whatnot, or some things that we know to be already true, and use logical arguments in order to come up with the truthfulness of whatever you want to prove. Okay? So, tingnan natin ano yung mga pwede nating gamiting mga tools, all right? So, let's see. Yeah. Let me add another page here. You might want to take some notes here, or if you want, you can just go back to the recording later to get the notes. I'll be inserting a page here to show you proofs of some parts of proposition number 1, because I think I didn't include proofs here. Talagang ginagawa ko siya as a class exercise or a do it live para kasama kayo dun sa thinking process kesa dun sa binabasa nyo na lang yung proofs. But in the latter parts of the module, if there's a very important theorem, I will include I am usually including the proofs already in the module, so you can read it, and then we can just discuss the finer details of the proof. But I am assuming that most of you are learning proving now, or are relearning how to prove, or this is something you have done years ago, so para rin maganda siyang review. All right? The nice thing about dito sa mga problems na to ay kukonti pa lamang yung mga pwede nating magamit dun sa pag-prove. Kasi ano pa lang ba meron tayo? Definition pa lang ng field. Doon maglalaro yung mga things or mga concepts na pwede niyong magamit para dun sa pag-prove ng mga bagay-bagay dito. So let's try to come up with the proof of parts of proposition 1. Right? So siguro unahin natin ito. Prove natin yung una. The additive identity of F is unique. Right? Can anybody remind me, kahit in layman's terms, what is the identity nga ulit? What do we mean when we say an element of F is the additive identity? Yes, Richard?
Additive identity is the element where add to any say ordered pair A and B and F gives back the same ordered pair A and B. Tama po ba?
Alright. Yes. Though mas generic kasi wala pa tayong usapan ng dito ng ordered pair, kasi ang sabi lang dito si F ay kahit anong field, not necessarily ordered pairs. But the gist of what you're saying is right. The identity is that element of the field when added to another element will just give us back that other element. Walang epekto dun sa identity ng mga members ng F yung pag-a-add ng additive identity. All right? And then this proposition 1.1 is claiming na unique ang additive identity. Ibig sabihin, isa lamang yung posibleng maging additive identity sa isang field. All right? So, hindi pwedeng magkaroon ng dalawang additive identity. That is, you cannot have two elements of the field that preserve the identity of all the members of the field. All right? Yun yung gusto natin ngayong i-prove. Halimbawa, usually kapag ka nalilito kayo or hindi nyo ma-imagine kagad yung essence ng proof, nung gusto nyo i-prove, you can always go back to the familiar examples. Halimbawa, sa field of real numbers, what is the additive identity? With the usual addition. Sa usual addition of real numbers, ang additive identity natin ay
0.
0. Great. Kasi ang 0 plus any other number will just give us back the other number. Tama? Tapos iisipin kayo, the additive identity of F is unique. So kung totoo tong statement na to, ibig sabihin wala nang ibang real number. Ang pag-inad ko sa isa pang real number, ang sagot ay yung real number pa rin na yun. Wala nang ibang nakakagawa nung ginagawa ni 0 sa lahat ng real numbers. And that's what we want to prove, right? One usual proof technique when you want to show uniqueness is to prove it by a contradiction, right? When we say you prove it by a contradiction, gusto nyong i-prove na hindi siya pwedeng maging mali, all right? So, halimbawa, ang kiniklaim ng theorem nitong proposition 1.1, nag-iisa lamang yung additive identity. One way to prove it, and this is the usual easy way to prove uniqueness, ay i-assume mo na mali yung theorem. ipakita mo na magkakaroon ng contradiction to something that we fundamentally know to be true kung mali yung theorem. Ibig sabihin, hindi pwedeng maging mali yung theorem. Kasi kung mali yung theorem o mali yung statement, guguho yung foundation of math. Something will be wrong. So ang gagawin ko ngayon, i-assume ko, kunwari, for the sake of contradiction, that the additive identity of a field is not unique. That is, I can find two different members of the field that can serve as an additive identity. And from there, I want to draw a contradiction. Gusto kong makahanap ng isang statement na mali mula dun sa maling supposition o maling assumption. If I'll be able to come up with an absurd statement from that false from the negation of the theorem, then that means yung theorem hindi siya pwedeng maging mali. Kasi kung mali siya, magkakaroon ng malaking problema yung foundation of math. All right? So I'll start with that. So again, I'll note here that we are doing a proof by contradiction. And this is probably what you have heard back when you took your math courses to be an indirect proof. Okay. Then usually nagsisimula to sa suppose for the sake of contradiction. Pero meron akong ginagamit na shortcut para sa mahabang statement na yan. When I want to write suppose for the sake of contradiction, I simply write a $sign, right? Para maiksi lang. Though hindi siya conventional. Pero sa mga klase ko, sinasabi ko sa mga estudyante ko, pag nakakita kayo ng $sign, ang ibig sabihin nun, suppose for the sake of contradiction. So you can also use that within the class. Pero paglabas nyo sa klase na to, baka hindi na to yung ginagamit na symbol ng prof nyo. Kasi ito ay namana ko lang dun sa mga prof ko na sinabi rin naman nila na sila lang yung nag-imbento. So, parang internal symbol namin yung $sign para sa suppose for the sake of contradiction. That what? The negation of what I want to prove. Gusto ko i-prove ng additive identity ay unique. So, isusuppose ko for the sake of finding a contradiction that there exists, say, E and F in capital F, that both serve as additive identity. All right. Everything is good. Nakita niyo yung pagkuha ng supposition. Inassume ko lang na mali yung theorem. So ibig sabihin kung hindi unique yung additive identity, meron dalawang elements, tawagin ko siyang E at saka si F, na parehas nagsiserve as an additive identity and at the same time, E is not equal to F. Kasi sinabi ko nga dito, may dalawa na magkaibang additive identity. Ang gusto ko yung mangyari, makahugot ng isang maling statement mula dito sa fact na si E at saka si F ay parehas additive identity. Okay? All right, so what can I do now? Ano kaya ang pwede kong gawin? Yes, Richard.
Sir, pwedeng mag-ano tayo. Suppose there's another element A in F
Okay.
such that A plus E is equal to 0. Sorry, A plus E is equal to A.
Yeah, A equals C equals A.
A and A plus F is equal to A.
Okay. So, yeah, I think I know where Richard is going. So, dahil si E at saka si F ay parehas additive identities, pag inad ko sila sa kahit na anong element nung set, nung field F, walang nababago dun sa answer, right? A plus C is still equal to A at saka si A plus F ay equal pa rin kay A. Okay? Now, anyone who has an idea where Richard wants to go from here? Yes, Azalea?
Then pwede po kaya sir nating i-equate by ano po, hindi po pala pwedeng gumamit ng transitive property since hindi pa po yun na-introduce ano po. Pero since both are equal to A, then we may equate A plus E to A
Mhm.
plus F. A plus E equals A plus F po.
Great. Yeah. Actually, tama ka, no? If we will be going to use the meta-axiom of ignorance, hindi ko sinabi yung transitive property of equality, but actually that's one of the fundamental assumptions of Euclid na kapag ka meron kang dalawang bagay na equal sa parehas na bagay, then the two bagays that you started with ay equal sa isa't isa. So si A plus C ay equal kay A, at the same time si A plus F ay equal rin kay A. So I think everybody will agree that A plus E is equal to A plus F, right? Okay, yes, Azalea, meron kang idadagdag?
Ano sir, yung yung katuloy lang po niya. And since they are equal, then E is equal to F.
Bakit?
Since it's an equation po, and one of the addends is A, then that means E is equal to F.
Obvious ba siya?
Ah.
ganito ko i-grade yung mga ano nyo, no, yung mga sagot niya. Something might be obvious for us, pero minsan ay hindi. Alright? So, halimbawa, alam ko yung gustong gawin ni Azalea, E equals F, and then tapos na yung boxing, right? Pero, paano ko siya ma-justify? Pero medyo subjective ako rito kasi tinanggap ko itong transitive property, which I guess is obvious, right? So parang natural siya. Pero parang gusto mangyari ni Azalea rito ay sort of a cancellation law para dun sa, kasi pareha silang may A at saka A dito, posible ko siyang makancel. E equals F. Ganito ang ginagawa natin sa equations. Pero hindi siya obvious kasi. Alright? Richard, yes.
Sir, pwede siguro na na subtract A from both sides.
But what is subtraction? Wala tayong subtraction sa
Okay.
field.
Yeah. So can we add the additive inverse of A if na-define na natin na may additive inverse si A?
Meron ba siyang additive inverse?
Sir, assumption lang.
Assumption dahil?
Well, it's a field anyway. In the first,
Yeah,
F is a
great.
field.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. That we can add to both sides of the equation the negative of A, which we know to exist because A is a field. All right. So we know that negative A exists because F is a field. And that's part of the assumption, right? Because if you go back to proposition 1, sabi dyan, si F ay isang field. So napopossess niya lahat ng properties na meron tayo kanina. All right? And then you will use associativity. You'll get negative A plus E equals negative A plus F by associativity of addition. Right? Kasi field nga si F, so yung addition niya ay associative. And then what is negative A plus A? Ano ang negative A plus A?
0 po.
Zero, sir.
Paano kung yung mga A natin ay mga hindi numbers, mga apples sila, mga bananas sila? So wala tayong symbol na 0. Although in-introduce ko pala siya na term na 0, no? So lulusot yung sagot nyo. Pero what I'm looking for is that would be the additive identity. Right? Kasi pag nag-add ka ng inverses ng isa't isa, makukuha mo yung additive identity. At ano yung additive identity natin? Sure tayo na meron tayong dalawang, dito sa ating assumption, meron tayong dalawang additive identities. So pwede ko sulat na E plus E. Kasi anyway, negative A plus A, this is equal to the additive identity. Laging equal ang sum ng inverse at saka ng isang element sa additive identity. Tama kayo, yung technical term ay zero, but not the symbol zero, but that's the zero of the field, yung additive identity. Tapos dito sa kwento na binubuo natin, ang tinawag nating additive identity ay CA at saka si F. So you could have written this as E, this guy, computin nyo siya as E, that's fine. You could have also chosen to write it as F, kasi si F ay additive identity rin. So your choice. Kasi ito, pwede ko rin isulat na E plus F. Alright? Good? Did you see the point? Medyo nakakalito, no? Kasi may mga bagay na parang obvious na obvious sa atin, pero pag sinulat mo algebraically, medyo marami palang pasikot-sikot or maraming mga technical details na kailangan daanan at i-justify. Alright? But does this make sense or malabo? Kasi natahimik na kayo.
Makes sense, sir.
All right, good, good. Okay. So, ngayon, saan equal ang E plus E? Equal yan sa, yes, Azalea?
It's a symbol for the additive identity po, ano, sir? So, equals E?
Yes. Kasi ito, parang siya lang yung zero, ano? Additive identity plus anything will give us the other thing, right? Dito naman sa kabila, ano gusto kong gamitin? Parehas naman silang additive identity, ano? So, ang gagawin ko na lang, i-treat ko to be the additive identity. Pag in-add ko siya sa kahit anong element, which is F, ang sagot ay si F pa rin. Right? You could have written E here. Tama pa rin naman yun. Kaya lang hindi ko kailangan yung E plus E. Anong kailangan ko? Makahanap ng isang kasinungalingan dito sa ating ginagawa. Kasi nga, nag-start tayo with a false assumption, right? So here we have shown that if our original supposition is true, kung tama, ibig sabihin, si E ay magiging equal kay F. Pero ang assumption natin na pinanggalingan yan ay si E ay hindi equal kay F. So ibig sabihin, itong dalawang bagay na yan, hindi sila pwedeng maging totoo at the same time. So therefore, we cannot accept our supposition that there exists two different additive identities. Kasi pag meron dalawang additive identity na magkaiba, mapapakita natin na yung dalawang magkaibang identities na yon ay iisa lamang, which doesn't make any sense, right? And then to signal that you have found a contradiction, lagyan nyo lang yan ng date scrig or a lightning symbol or a Harry Potter symbol that stands for a contradiction. So therefore, which we usually write as 3 dots in a triangular form, therefore, there exists unique additive identity. So when I have a there exists symbol followed by an exclamation point, that means there exists a unique. So there exists unique additive identity for any field. For any field. End of proof. And then we usually signal the end of the proof by a block box. Okay. Any questions? Does that make sense? Parang ang weird, no, na mga ginagawa natin. Kahit yung mga simpleng bagay, kailangan nating i-prove. But that's math. Ano? Kasi yung problema rito, wala tayong ibang alam kundi field lang si F. Hindi natin alam kung field siya ng mga numbers, field ba siya ng mga apples, bananas, matrices, whatever. They could be any object together with two crazy operations, addition and multiplication. Pero alam natin maganda yung properties ng fields. So kung meron kang field, nag-iisa lamang yung additive identity. All right? So you can try proving the second statement in Proposition 1. Proposition 1.2 says the multiplicative identity of F is unique. I trust that I think you can follow the same methodology. Try to write a proof by contradiction. All right? Sige, isa pa siguro. Pakita naman natin ay isang direct proof. Let's do Proposition 1.3, 0 times A ay equal kay 0. Right? So ito na yung 0 of the field times any element of the field ay equal kay 0, where 0 is the additive identity. So here recall, 0 is not the number 0, but 0 is the additive identity. And then this theorem seems to be obvious because if you go back to the usual real number system that we know, alam natin field, yung set of real numbers together with usual addition and multiplication, ang additive identity ay si 0. So this property applied to R means that pag si 0, minultiply mo sa kahit na anong real number, ang sagot ay 0 pa rin. We were raised to accept this without any question. Tama? Yung mga notebook natin ng grade 2 or grade 3, may multiplication table sa likod. Lagi na lang nakalagay 0 times 1 ay 0, 0 times 2 ay 0, 0 times 3 ay 0. Pero hindi natin tinanong yung elementary teachers natin, ma'am, bakit ang 0 times 1 ay 0? Baka mapagalitan tayo pag ginawa natin yun, tatawagin tayong philosopher. But here, this is the perfect time for us to prove that indeed, when you multiply the multiplicative identity to any member of the field, ang sagot ay 0 pa rin, yung additive identity. So property number 3 tells us in all generalities that the additive identity times any element of the field will give us the additive identity. Okay? And probably here, what I'll do is to do a direct proof. So a direct proof is something that you start with the assumptions of the statement. All right, kung may assumption yung statement, you can use those assumptions and then use logical steps, use previous results, use previously defined properties and whatever was known to be true beforehand in order to come up with the desired statement. Here, we want to show that 0 times A is equal to 0. And this is an identity which we want to prove. And I told you last time, whenever proving identities, we want to start with only one side of the equation and then use valid steps in order to get equality with the right-hand side. Okay? So yun yung gagawin natin dito sa direct proof. So mag-start ako sa 0 times A. At gusto kong gamitin yung, what you call that? Gusto kong gamitin yung mga properties ng field para mapakita ng 0 times A ay 0. How can I do that? Actually, hindi pala to ganon kadaling isipin. But anyone who has an idea? Yes, Sol.
Pwede po kaya tayong magsimula by expressing 0 as 0 plus 0?
As 0 times 0.
0 plus 0 po.
Sorry, 0 plus 0. Yeah, 0 plus 0 is really 0. I agree with that. So, gustong gawin ni Sol, hatiin ko yung 0 na to for whatever reason only she knows at this point. So, yung 0, isulat ko siya na 0 plus 0. At hindi ko siya pwedeng malian kasi yung 0 plus 0 ay 0 naman talaga, right? Because 0 is our symbol for the additive identity. The additive identity added to any other number will give us back this box number, which is really this guy. So I hope everyone will agree that this equation is true. All right? Tapos Sol, ano yung gusto mong gawing susunod?
We can use the distributive property po to multiply A over 0 and 0. So 0 times A plus 0 times A.
Right? This is by distributivity of multiplication over addition. And that's valid, right? Because this is one of the field axioms. Kasi si F ay field, so distributive dapat yung multiplication niya over the addition. And then, what's next?
Ay, teka. Ay, teka lang po, sir.
Sige lang. Ayan, gusto yatang tumulong ni Azalea. Ay, ano pala nickname mo, Azalea? Azalea? Or you have
Azel po, sir. Azel po.
Azel?
Opo.
Okay, go Azel. May suggestion ka?
Sorry, sir, napaaga po yung pag-raise ko ng hand. Parang iba, sir, yung iniisip ko naman po na solution po.
Okay.
Siguro later po. Opo.
Sige, sige. Kaya tingnan natin kung may sasalba natin tong gusto mangyari ni Sol. Yes, Richard.
Sir, iniisip ko kung pwede nating magamit yung part 13 na if A and B, if A dot B or A times B is equal to 0, then A is equal to 0 or B is equal to 0. Kasi meron tayong 0 times A eh.
Pero bawal pang gamitin yan, Richard, kasi hindi pa natin
Bawal
na-prove na totoo yan.
Okay.
So kasi di ba,
Okay,
ang
then,
pwede
sige.
lang natin gamitin ay yung mga alam na natin to be true.
Proper.
So hindi pa natin to na-prove. So bawal pa siya.
Sige, sir.
Yes.
Isip-isip pa tayo.
Yeah. Ganun naman talaga yan eh. Always back to the drawing board kapag kabawal. Siguro sulat ko to this way. Tanggalin ko tong parentheses. Tapos sulat ko na rin to. Parehas lang naman yun, ha? Baka mas obvious yung susunod na pwedeng gawin. Ayan, meron ng 0 times A ay equal kay 0 times A plus 0 times A. Hindi ko ma-simplify ito kasi hindi ko alam kung ano yung 0 times A. Gusto ko palang ipakita na siya ay equal kay 0. But I don't know kung equal ba siya talaga kay 0 or hindi. Right? So kaya ganito ko lang siya kayang isulat as of now. Pero what can I do next year? Yes, Aline.
Sa akin po, sir, yung idea ko lang to make it 0 as well. Parang hindi ganon yung nakikita ko. Sa akin lang po ito, Doc. We can actually say that 0 multiplied to A is equal to, parang i-switch nyo lang natin, like A multiplied by 0 is still 0. Parang i-equate lang natin siya, Doc, tapos switch positions.
So ito yon. And then?
Tapos we can actually, pwede ba tayong mag-let dyan, Doc? Or hindi pa?
Anong ilalet natin? Let?
The value of A is any constant number. Say for example lang.
So magbibigay ka na ng isang number para sa kanya. Isang specific number?
Opo.
Hindi
So,
siya
hindi pa rin
pwede.
ako sure.
Yeah. Kasi ang gusto nating i-prove ay dapat ito ay totoo sa lahat ng A. So once na nagbigay ka na ng isang specific example, halimbawa ginawa mong A equals 5, hindi na pwede yung proof mo kasi yung gusto kong statement, dapat totoo siya sa lahat ng posibleng A. So bawal magbigay ng example.
Okay.
Pero good try though. Pero ang weird kasi nung ginagawa natin eh. Yes. Sino yan? Rose?
Sir, pwede po bang since meron na po tayo na 0 times A, di ba pinupo po natin that 0 times A equals 0. So by replacement property, yung 0 times A and then 0 times plus 0 times A can be replaced by 0. Possible po ba yun, sir?
Which one? This guy?
Opo.
Gagawin ko lang siyang 0?
Opo. Or pwede rin naman po, sir, since A is a common factor, we can factor that out.
Pero babalik lang ako dito.
Ay, oo nga.
Yeah, good try.
Alright,
Bumalik. Yeah,
Sir?
nagbabalik si Sol. Go, Sol.
Sorry. So we can manipulate both sides naman po, no?
Yes.
Okay. So we subtract the additive inverse of 0 times A from both sides of the equation.
Great. Sorry. Plus negative nito. Equals 0 times A plus 0 times A plus the negative of 0 times A. Alright? Bakit natin to pwedeng gawin? Kasi alam natin binary operation yung multiplication. So si 0 at saka si A ay parehas nasa field. So yung product nila under whatever multiplication was defined on the field is still on the field. Dahil itong 0 times A ay nasa field, meron siya dapat additive inverse. Ang additive inverse niya, tawagin kong negative ng 0 times A. And you need to be careful here kasi hindi ko alam kung kanino pupunta yung negative sign. Right? Kaya dapat yung symbol na 0 times A, siya yung lalagyan ko ng negative sign. Right? Or if you don't want to be confused with it, siguro i-borrow ko yung suggestion kanina. I forgot who was it. I will let y to be equal to 0 times a para madali lang siyang isulat so that what we'll have here is y equals y plus y. Tapos mag-add lang ako ng negative y to both sides, right? So y plus y plus negative y. And then I can use associativity. All right. Pag nag-associativity na ako, I know this guy plus this guy will just be 0. Tama? Kasi ito ay inverse nito. So ang sum nila ay identity. Additive identity. And then here, I'm going to use associativity para mapagsama ito at saka ito. So ang matitira, so ang sum nila ay magiging 0. But siguro gawin ko siya in detail. So masusulat ko siya as plus 0 times A plus negative 0 times A. And then I know this will be 0. So we'll have 0 equals 0 plus A plus 0. Tapos ito ay additive identity lang, no? So wala tong epekto to whatever, to 0 times A. So we'll have 0 equals 0 times A. So therefore, A times 0 ay equal kay 0. And 0 times A pala yung gusto ko maging equal kay 0. So 0 times A is indeed equal to 0. All right? Ang weird, no? Pero yeah, that's how you prove it. Medyo nakakalito lang kasi ang daming nangyari, ano? One alternative, sino nga ba yung nagsabi kanina? May iba siyang naisip na idea. Yes, Hazel.
Yes, sir. Try lang po. From the given, sir, 0 times A, 0 may be expressed in terms of A also. Tama po ba? A plus its additive it's additive inverse. Opo. A plus negative A times A. Opo. Tapos, sir, since A plus its additive inverse is 0, hindi po pala. Sorry, by distributive property po pala. We'll have AA plus its additive inverse, negative AA. And sir, then, since additive inverses po sila, then it's also equal to 0.
Etong
AA
dalawa?
plus, ito pong right side, papa.
Sure ba tayo ng inverse nito ay ito?
Negative AA po.
Pero sure ba tayo nun? Ang alam kong, yeah. Talagang ginugulo ko kayo, ano? Okay lang yan. Talagang yun yung trabaho ko rito. Guluhin kayo, ano? So, yung alam ko, ang additive inverse ng A times A ay negative ng A times A. Right? Per our notation. Nilalagyan ko lang ng negative sign sa harap nung whatever the element of the field is. Kaya lang, ito ay hindi ko alam kung equal siya dito. Alam ba natin? Alam natin kung usual ano to. Alam natin kung usual addition or multiplication to, no? Kasi marunong tayo mag-multiply ng negative A times A, magiging negative A squared siya, tapos ito ay magiging A squared minus A squared is 0. That could have worked. Pero hindi ko alam kasi baka crazy yung multiplication. Baka out of this world yung pagkaka-define ng multiplication. Hindi ko na alam kung yung negative A, additive inverse of A, times A, kung ito ba ay equal sa additive inverse ni A times A? This is still a question mark, but this is actually one of the parts of the proposition. Alam ko, totoo yan. So, totoo yan, Azel. Pero hindi pa natin kasi na-prove na totoo yan. So, kaya hindi ko pa siya pwedeng gamitin, unfortunately. Okay?
Sir,
Yes, Rose.
to back up po yung solution ni Ma'am Azel, is it possible po ba since plus and then the quantity of negative A times A, that would become a subtraction? So, A times A minus A times A.
So A times A minus A times A. So this guy, ay gusto nyo isulat as minus A times A.
Opo, tapos bring down po yung A.
Hindi pa siya rin siya pwede. Kasi, di ba, ang definition natin ng A minus B ay A plus the additive inverse of B, right? Yan yung subtraction na tinatawag dito sa field. Pero ngayon, hindi ko alam kung ito ay additive inverse ng A times A. So question is this the additive inverse of A times A? Although, ang hirap kasi i-unlearn nung alam na natin, no? Na ginagawa natin pang araw-araw tapos kailangan pa pala natin siyang i-justify. Magagawa ko lang yung A times A plus, ito yung pwede kong gawin. A times A plus the additive inverse of A times A. And pay extra attention to how I'm reading the things I'm writing. So this is A times A plus the additive inverse of A times A. This is what I can write as A times A minus A times A. But if I will read this is A times A plus the product of the additive inverse of A times A. And the additive inverse of A times A is not yet established to be the additive inverse of A times A. Nasa part pa siya ng proposition. So, hindi siya pwede, unfortunately. For now. Pero pag na-prove na natin yung proposition 1.4, pwede na siyang gamitin. Right? Siguro the other solution I am looking for, which is very similar to what we have above, ay instead na isulat si 0 as 0 times 0 plus 0, pwede ko siyang isulat na, hold on, hindi pa rin pala pwede. Sulat ko sana siya na 1 plus negative 1. 1 plus negative 1. Hindi pa pala pwede. Yeah, I think this is the best solution. Hindi pa pala pwede yung naiisip kong solution. Sana isusulat ko yung 0 times A as 1 plus negative 1. Where 1 is the additive, is the multiplicative identity. Hindi ko pa rin siya pala pwedeng gamitan because I will run into the same problem of having A plus negative 1 times A. And negative 1 times A, hindi ko pa sure kung equal siya kay negative A. Yes, on.
Sir, pwede rin siguro tayong magsimula sa 0 plus 0 equals 0. And then very similar lang din yung proof doon sa taas. Apo.
Yeah. So parang backwards naman, no?
Apo.
Yeah. As long as you will just use yung mga properties ng field. Alright? Yun lang yung kailangan ko mahanap dun sa solution. Pag nakakita ko ng butas, magkaka-minus na kayo dun sa solution. Ano? Questions about that particular problem? Medyo weird, no? Yes, Richard.
So, hindi dito sa problem natin ngayon, but sa homework item number 7. Kasi parang ganun din yung yung may negative eh. So, actually, hindi ko alam kung related ba to, sir, sa number 7? Yung ganitong direct proof ba siya or indirect proof sa item 7?
Sad. This would be a direct proof. Kasi, yeah. Usually, don't think of them as mga fractions. Pwede nyo siyang basahin this way. This is what? this is the multiplicative inverse of the additive inverse of A, right? Kasi naka-negative 1 yan. So, ibig sabihin, multiplicative inverse siya nung nandito. So, this guy, the left-hand side, is the multiplicative inverse of the additive inverse of A. Agree?
Yes, sir.
Right? Gusto mong ipakita na yung multiplicative inverse ng additive inverse ni A ay equal sa, how do you read it naman? The right-hand side.
Sir, it's the additive inverse of
Additive
the
inverse.
multiplicative inverse of the multiplicative inverse of A. Tama po ba?
Great. So gusto mo ipakita na yung multiplicative inverse ng additive inverse ni A ay equals sa additive inverse ng multiplicative inverse ni A. How do you do it? Maybe I can try to answer one of, or to prove another part of the proposition so that you'll have an idea what to do next. All right, so that's what I'm going to do next. But I'll go first to Sol. Sol, question?
Sir, balik lang doon sa proof natin, clarification.
Uh-huh.
Do we need to justify each step, or kapag ano na siya, parang part na siya ng definition ng field or ng operations ng dun sa definition ng field, hindi na kailangan i-justify?
Yeah, it will be nice if you will put the reason, ano? Lalo na kung hindi obvious. So, pwedeng katulad nito, actually tinamad lang magsulat, pero dapat at least at the start we justify every line. So here I could write by property of additive inverses. Kasi dito ginamit ko yung pagiging additive inverses nilang ng isa't isa. Oh no. Yeah. No, dito pala ay addition property of equality, which is another Euclidean meta-axiom. Pag nag-add ka ng parehas na bagay sa dalawang parehas na bagay, yung sum ay parehas pa rin. Right? So yeah, I added to both sides of the equation the same thing, and I will get an equation pa rin. Tapos dito, dapat associativity, sulat ko associativity of addition. Tapos dito ay zero property or property of additive inverses. Kasi pinag-add ko yung dalawang inverses, kaya ako nakuha si zero. Tapos itong last ay property of the additive identity. Kasi nag-add ako ng identity, natira yung 0 times A. So it would be nice if you write your the reasons line by line, para matsanay tayo, right? Kasi baka biglang itanong ko, bakit niya kaya ito nasulat? Wala naman kayo sa tabi ko habang nag-check para sabihin, sir, ganito yung ginawa ko, or ganito yung reason. So better write the reasons for every line, right? But as we go along, we can just ignore those obvious things and just justify those that are not straightforward. Okay? Pero for now, sulat niyo muna yung justification. Put the extra effort of writing the justifications. Okay, now let me just choose which one to prove. All right, so siguro, anong gusto nyo? Gawin ko yung 1.4. Siguro last ay yung 1.9 para pwede nyo sagutan yung item 7. So sayang din yun, worth 5 points din yun. So let's try 1.4. This is what proposition 1.4 is telling us. A times negative B. Again, I am, from our point of view, this is A times the additive inverse of B equal daw to sa additive inverse ni AB, right? At equal daw to sa additive inverse ni A times B. And if you will be reading it, or if an elementary student will be reading this, parang napaka-obvious, because we know how to multiply by -1 or to work with negative symbols. But now the negative sign is a different thing for us, because the negative sign simply means that whatever the entire quantity is the additive inverse of the symbol following the negative sign. So this guy is not negative b because there's no such thing as negative b in our field. This is the additive inverse of b. So this guy is the product of a and the additive inverse of b. Meanwhile, this is negative ab or -1 times AB. This is the additive inverse of AB. And this guy is the additive inverse of A times B. So clear na ba? Clear yung distinction between the three sides of the equation? Okay. And then understanding or reading it that way will give us an idea of how to go about with the proof. All right? So, halimbawa, ipoprove ko muna ito. Kasi medyo tatlong equation yung gusto nating i-prove dito no? So, gawin ko lang siguro yung isa. So, let's try to prove that A times negative B ay equal kay negative AB. I'm committing the same mistake of reading it as negative AB, but this is A times the additive inverse of B is equal to the additive inverse of AB. All right? Gusto ko ipakita na ito ay additive inverse ni AB. So how do I show something is the additive inverse of another thing? Siguro in simple terms, how do I show that X is the additive inverse of Y? Because essentially this is the crux of this statement. How do I show that X is the additive inverse of Y? Sige, Richard.
Sir, pwede siguro na, for example, if we start dun, sir, sa right side na equation, the additive inverse of AB. So we can say that AB is the additive inverse of, sir, ang gusto kong sabihin, if I start in the right side, the additive identity, additive inverse of AB plus AB results to 0.
Okay, yeah, that's correct.
Dahil sa field naman yung, I mean, AB is in the field. Sir. So from that, hindi ko alam. Pero at least
okay lang yan.
is the starting point.
Yeah, you can start here, but unfortunately, I don't know where will it get us. Let's see. Baka hindi ko lang nakikita. Hindi ko nakikita eh. Pero balik ako dun sa question ko kanina. Kasi essentially, I can view this problem as showing that A times negative, by showing that A times the additive inverse of B is equal to the additive inverse of AB. So really, the question is, how do I show that, say, a number X is the additive inverse of Y? How do I show this? Paano ko mapakita na si X ay additive inverse ni Y? Yes, Sol.
So if we add X and Y, we will get the additive identity.
Great. So if you want to show, thank you, Sol, that's right. If you want to show that X is the additive inverse of Y, kunin mo lang yung sum nila, dapat equal kay 0. Tama? Okay. So if I will apply that to this statement, how do I read this statement again? A times the additive inverse of B is the additive inverse of AB. So what can I do here? would you agree that the thing I want to do here is to show that A times negative B plus AB is equal to what?
0 po.
Is 0, right? So, yeah, tanggalin ko na to. So, siguro start ko siya sa note that. Mag-start ako sa A times the additive inverse of B. I add ko kay AB. The reason is, gusto kong ipakita na ito ay additive inverse ni AB, right? Kasi again, pag binasa ko to, si A times additive inverse ni B ay equal sa additive inverse ni AB. Sabi nga natin, para mapakita ng isang number ay additive inverse ng isa pang number, i-add mo yung dalawang number, dapat yung sagot ay 0, right? So in order to show that this is the additive inverse of AB, kailangan kong silang i-add and pray that the answer is 0. Pero kaya ko ba itong gawin? I think so. Now, what would be the next step? All right. So I have my fingers crossed right now that the answer, when I simplify this, is 0. Because if I'll be able to show that this is 0, that means this guy and this guy are additive inverses of each other, right? So ibig sabihin ng additive inverse ni AB ay equal sa etong guy na to, A times additive inverse of B. Do you get my plan here? Or malabo? Para nag-ano lang ako, no? Para nagta-tongue twister lang ako ng mga additive inverses. Pero that's the idea, right? So again, you interpret it using additive inverses. So I have my fingers crossed that this is equal to 0. What's the next step that we can do? Ano yung pwede kong gawin? Nagdadasal ako na to ay equal kay 0. But I cannot just pray. Kailangan meron akong action na gawin. Ano yung pwede kong gawin? Yes, Hazel?
Sir, pwede po kayang since dun po sa given natin, the additive inverse of AB is equal to A times the additive inverse of B. So ito pong unang addend natin na A times the additive inverse of B will make it additive inverse of AB. Pwede po kaya, sir, yun?
Hindi. Kasi yun yung gusto kong ipakita. Di ba natin to sure ay totoo? Ito yung gusto kong ipakita.
Ay, opo.
So, be careful dun sa mga circular reasoning kasi mahuhuli ko yan. Alright? So, anything that we can do? Yes, Son.
Distributive property po, we can take out A and leave in negative B plus B.
Okay, great. So ito ay by distributivity of multiplication over addition. Applied backwards nga lang, no? Pero okay lang din naman yan. And then I think what will happen next is obvious, right? So look at the parentheses. In the group, you have negative B plus B. What is negative B plus B? In-expect pa naman na sabay-sabay kayong sasagot. Sabihin ko na sana, very good children. Ano? Pero tumahimik kayo. So this is 0, right? Negative B plus B ay 0. Property ng additive inverses, right? Pero ano yung A times 0?
0, sir. From proposition 1.
Yeah. Great. Na-prove na natin ng A times 0. Actually, hindi pala. Pinrove natin ay 0 times A. Pero ang A times 0 ay equal kay 0 times A by commutativity of multiplication. Right? Tapos yung 0 times A ay 0 by proposition 1.3. Dapat capital letter in proposition. Okay. Okay. And so therefore, we have shown that A times the additive inverse of B and AB are additive inverses of each other. Kasi ang sum nila ay 0, nangyayari lamang yon pag ang dalawang pinag-add natin sa isang field ay additive inverses ng isa't isa due to the commutativity of addition there, so of each other. Thus, we can say that A times the additive inverse of B ay equals sa additive inverse ni AB. Right? So, pwede mo na yung end proof na yan. And then similarly, you can show the other equalities, right? Similarly, you can show that the additive inverse of AB is also equal to the additive inverse of A times B. So try to prove this, but the proof is really similar to what we did, just as a quick exercise. Good? Questions, clarifications? Okay, siguro. Okay, so siguro try natin tong isa pa. And I think this will equip you in answering problem 7 na rin. Ito, proposition what? Proposition 9 or 10? Sige, masaya yung proposition 9. So, saka mas madali siya kaysa proposition 10. Although, similar naman sila, but if you get the idea of the proof of proposition 9, then you'll be good. So, in proposition 1.9 says that if A is non-zero, then the multiplicative inverse of the multiplicative inverse of the multiplicative inverse of A ay equal kay A. Pero parang papaikutin ko lang yung proof na to. Yeah. But first, let's ask the question, why is this assumption necessary? Why do I need to assume that A is not equal to 0? Yes, Isel?
Sir, this time po ba pwede na po nating i-equate si A or paano nga po binabasa, multiplicative inverse of A to 1 over A? Pwede na po bang i-equate, sir, yun?
Yes, but this is just a matter of notation. Okay, tapos?
Yun po, we cannot divide by 0 cannot be a divisor. Pwede na po ba yun, sir?
Yeah, kung nasa numbers tayo, yeah, I get the point. So kaya kailangan si A ay hindi 0 kasi yung A inverse ay pwede mong imagine as A over 1 over A, pero si A ay hindi pwedeng mag-0. Yeah, that could fly. Pero nakataas yung kamay ni Ian. Ian, may dadagdag ka?
Sir, because 0 has no inverse.
Yeah. This is similar to your answer. Sino nga yung kanina? Si Hazel ba yun? Sorry, nakalimutan ko sino. Meron ng memory ng isang goldfish. So madali ako makalimot. So yeah, but in the general sense, Ian's answer is more appropriate. Na kasi si 0, walang multiplicative inverse. So there's no point in writing A inverse if A is equal to 0 because its inverse doesn't exist. So that means proposition 9 will only apply kapag sure tayo na may multiplicative inverse. And we are sure that there is a multiplicative inverse whenever A is not equal to 0. All right? But then, how do we prove this? Well, gusto kong ipakita ng multiplicative inverse ni A ay equal kay A. So I'll go back to a similar question I posed before. When can I show, or how can I show that X is the multiplicative inverse of Y? Paano ko ito mapapakita? Okay, yes, Richard?
Sir, bale, x times y will be 1.
Okay, this is what I want to show, right? But again, for clarity, yung 1 na to na binanggit ni Richard ay hindi yung number 1. Ito yung multiplicative identity o yung unity. Para mapakita ng isang number ay multiplicative inverse ng isang number, dapat ang product ng dalawa ay equal kay 1. Alright? So anong gusto mong ipakita? Na ang multiplicative inverse ng multiplicative inverse ni A ay equal kay A. So what do I want to show here? I want to show that this guy is equal to this, times this guy is equal to 1. Right? Pero parang ang corny ng proof. Note that the multiplicative inverse of A ay equal times A. Kasi yun yung sinasabi kanina ni Richard, x times y is equal to 1. Our x here is this guy, and this is our y. So gusto ko ang x times y ay equal kay 1. But our x is A inverse, and then our y is A. So we know that this is equal to 1. Tama? By property of multiplicative inverse. So that is, this means that A is the multiplicative inverse of A inverse. In other words, or in symbols, ang corny pala nitong proof na to. In symbols, multiplicative inverse ni A ay equal kay A. Right? So that ends the proof. Kasi sabi ko kanina parang pinaikot ko lang. Pero this is just reinterpreting this statement. Because our initial interpretation to this statement is that A inverse is the multiplicative inverse of A. But we can read it the other way around, that the multiplicative inverse of the multiplicative inverse of A is equal to A, which is exactly proposition 1.9. Okay. Kaya kung mapapansin nyo, mas madaling i-prove itong mga statements na to kung babasahin nyo siya in terms of inverses. Okay? Siguro, sige, last na. Then papakawalan ko na kayo for now. Hindi ko na ito try simulan yung vector spaces. Let's do that on Friday or Saturday, but most likely on Saturday. Para medyo pahinga rin tayo kasi parang nakakapagod na maghapon na sa opisina, no? Tapos meron pa tayong 7 to 9 or 7 to 8:30. So agahan natin ngayon and then bawi tayo probably on Saturday, right? Para hindi masyadong corny, puntahan ko yung proposition 1.10. Yung proposition 1.10 tells us that maganda rin pala yung 1.11. So hindi tayo makakauwi kasi magaganda pa yung mga sumunod na theorem. Pero sige, ipapresent ko na lang yung mga theorems na yun para pwede natin siyang gamitan later, right? Proposition 1.10 tells us that AB inverse is equal to B inverse A inverse. Okay? So ano sinasabi nito? Ang multiplicative inverse ni A times B ay equal sa multiplicative inverse ni B times multiplicative inverse ni A. Or before I forget, balik ako sa 1.9. Hindi nyo pwedeng sabihin, sir, it is obvious because of the loss of exponents. There's no such thing as loss of exponents here. Because hindi naman talaga exponent yung negative 1. Siya lamang ay yung paraan ng pagsulat natin para sa multiplicative inverse. So nagkaparehas lang sila ng notation ng exponent na negative 1, which doesn't exist in our universe right now because we are only in a field, and yung multiplicative inverse. So nagkataon na ganun yung notation. All right? But now, can I prove this? Hold on. Kaya ko ba itong gawin? Yeah, I think so. Gusto ko ipakita na multiplicative inverse ni AB ay equal rito. So any suggestion how I can do it? So dahil ano na naman ako magpapakita na naman ako ng multiplicative inverses. So magmumultiply na naman ako ng dalawang bagay at mapakita ko dapat na sila equal sa 1, right? Because again, I can read it as the multiplicative inverse of A times B is equal to the multiplicative inverse of B times the multiplicative inverse of A. So sino yung ipagmumultiply ko para sino yung ipagmumultiply ko at gusto kong mapakita to be equal to 1 to conclude proposition 1.10. So, bibukid natin ngayon si Richard, si Azel, at saka si Azel. Pero sige, nauna si Richard. Hopefully next time we'll see other hands. But go ahead, Richard.
Sir, pwede ba na the inverse, a multiplicative inverse of A times A is equal to 1? And
Multiplicative inverse
B-
of A
sorry.
times A.
of A times is equal to 1.
Okay.
And then gagamitin natin isa pang equation, B times multiplicative inverse of B is equal to 1.
Uh-huh. And then?
Or sir, naisip ko lang i-multiply pala natin yung A dun sa unang, sa right hand side na equation. So, parang B, multiplicative inverse of B times B.
Mm-hmm.
Tapos, times A in multiplicative inverse of A times A.
Uh-huh.
Tapos i-associative sir yung A, multiplicative inverse of A tsaka A in parenthesis para
Tama ba?
hindi ko alam kung hanggang doon lang yung naisip ko eh.
Yeah. Parang nakikita ko na kanina yung liwanag. So yeah, thank you Richard for the suggestion. Although may mas madali kasi, right? Again, babasahin ko na naman to na si 8 a multiplicative inverse ni A times B ay ito. Right? So in other words, this theorem reads the multiplicative inverse of AB is B inverse A inverse. That's what we want to show. Gusto ko mapakita na multiplicative inverse ni AB ay yung multiplicative inverse ni B times multiplicative inverse ni A. So again, multiplicative inverse of X is Y can be shown by multiplying X and Y together and show that the product is equal to 1. Agree?
Yes, sir.
Okay, how about the others? Processing, okay, that's fine, that's good. Right. So, ipag-multiply ko lang pala yung dalawa para at hopefully, mapakita na sila ay equal kay 1 para masabi na sila ay multiplicative inverses ng isa't isa. Kaya sinasabi ko kanina, it really pays to read this in the language of the field, in the language of the established notations, rather than thinking of them as properties of exponents. You might say, yeah, sir, laws of exponents yan. Pero nagkataon na totoo yung sort of laws of exponents na yan sa real numbers kasi yung real numbers ay field. Kaya I admit, or I will agree with you, na medyo ang hirap sa umpisa na i-grasp yung ginagawa natin. Kasi we are really justifying and generalizing what we know from elementary, high school, college, gine-justify natin kung bakit siya totoo. Ginagamit natin yung laws of exponents para sa mga dambuhalang computations na ginagawa natin nung college. Pero ngayon, ang ginagawa natin, pinapakita natin na, yung mga ginagamit pala natin noon ay nagiging totoo lamang thanks to the field properties ng set of real numbers. And the nice thing is, totoo yung mga laws of exponents sa kahit na anong field. Parang ganun yung idea, right? But but I guess now the goal really is to show that A times B times B inverse A inverse is equal to 1. para mapakita na ito ay multiplicative inverse nito. Or the other way around, multiplicative inverse nito, ito. Alright? So, what would be the next step here? Again, I'm praying that this is equal to 1. Sana totoo na equal siya kay 1. Ano yung susunod na step?
Sir, associative.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it's associative property. So meron tayong A times, anong group ko? Malamang yung BB inverse, no? Times BB inverse times A inverse. Probably pwedeng ito yung i-group ko by associativity of multiplication. And then, property ng inverses. Yung B at saka B inverse ay inverses ng isa't isa. So this would be A times 1 times A inverse by property of multiplicative inverses. Okay? Tapos, ito times ito ay A inverse lamang by property of multiplicative identity. Tapos, AA inverse ay equal lang kay 1 by property of multiplicative inverses. Or you can say because A and A inverse are inverses of each other. So what's our conclusion here? Therefore, AB and B inverse A inverse are multiplicative inverses of each other. In other words, or in symbols, we can say that multiplicative inverse of AB ay B inverse A inverse. All right? That good? And I guess a combination of 1.10 and 1.4 will help you answer problem 7 in the homework. Okay. All right. So I am. Before we end, let's just run through the other important things here. Yeah. So this is the additive inverse of the additive inverse of A ay equal kay A. Again, yung proof nito, basahin nyo to. Additive inverse ng additive inverse ni A ay A. So kailangan pakita nyo ng negative A plus A ay 0, which is obvious, right? So hindi ito basta nag-multiply ako ng negative sign followed by a negative sign, negative ng negative ay nagiging positive. Hindi ganon. Kasi hindi yan mga basta-bastang multiplication, you know? So that's how you read it. Nice properties, property 11. This is the cancellation law for addition for fields. Ito yung gusto natin sanang gamitan kanina dun sa proof, pero hindi natin magawa kasi hindi pa siya na-prove. Pero pag meron kang A plus C ay equal kay B plus C, you can sort of cancel C from both sides and you'll get AB. Madali lang yung proof niya actually. Can anybody describe to me the proof of this statement? So dito ka mag-start kasi nasa if siya. Part siya ng assumption. So kung mag-start ka rito, paano mo papakita na si A ay equal kay B? Sige, ano yung detalyadong reason? Yes, Hazel.
Sir, try lang po. Pwede po bang gamitin, sir, ang mag-a-add po tayo ng additive inverse of C?
Yes, that's exactly how you do it. You add the additive inverse of C to both sides. Magkakaroon ka dito ng plus negative C, tapos associativity, C plus negative C, C plus negative C ay 0. You'll be left with A. Okay, great. Yes, Aline? May gusto kang dagdag?
Same lang kami ng idea ni Ma'am Doc. Like, say for example, yung A, sa A muna tayo mag-focus po. Like, let us say A is equal to A plus 0. Then we can get the inverse identity like A plus C plus the negative inverse ng C. Tapos doon naman sa kabila sa B. Kaya
Uh-huh.
maka-cancel yun siya, then matitira yung B. So therefore, yung A is equal sa B.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Thank you, Aline. And then yung proposition 12, siya naman yung cancellation law for multiplication. Nagiging totoo yung cancellation law, yung nakakapag-divide tayo both sides by a non-zero constant C. Nagiging totoo siya sa kahit anong field. Because in order to establish this, all we need to do is to multiply both sides by the multiplicative inverse of C, which we know to exist because C is not equal to 0 and C is a field element. Magkakaroon lang tayo gagamit lang tayo ng associativity of multiplication, then property of multiplicative inverses, you're gonna get this. All right? And then yung property number 12, this is what? This is the zero property of multiplication. Kapag meron kang dalawang numbers, pag pinag-multiply mo sila, ang sagot ay additive identity. Isa sa kanilang dalawa ay additive identity. Right? Pero nangyayari lang yan kapag nasa field ka. Alright? Totoo lang palagi yung proposition 1.13 pag nasa field ka. May mga structures kung saan hindi siya totoo. Halimbawa sa Z6. Tandaan nyo ba yung Z6 together with addition modulo 6 and multiplication modulo 6. Hindi siya field. Kasi si 6 ay hindi power of a prime. Right? Or hindi siya prime number. Anong 2 times 3 sa C6?
0.
0 po.
0. So nakakita tayo ng dalawang numbers na pag pinag-multiply natin, ang sagot ay 0, which is the additive identity. With neither of the factors being equal to 0. Right? So, importante na field siya para mag-hold yung zero property of multiplication. Right? So I think this is a good time to stop. Pero saglit lang guys. Bago magpaalam, charge ko lang yung laptop ko kasi 2 minutes na lang mamamatay na daw siya. Come on. Okay, there you go. So, any burning questions? Anything that will not make you sleep if you can't ask me right now? Wala naman. So, if you feel that the discussion is a little bit fast and you need time to digest the ideas, so yun yung kagandahan ng meron tayong recording, so parang silver lining ng online classes. So we have the recording. It will be available instantly dun sa mga members ng ating MS Teams. But for those who are not, give me probably an hour at most. Gagawin ko na, promise. Nakapag-dinner na naman ako habang nag-aantay ng klase natin. So, right after kong ibaba yung call, I'll download the recording and then I'll upload it to YouTube para pwede niyo siyang i-download o kaya i-play at your own pace. Para balikan yung mga discussion kung masyadong mabilis. Yeah, and I think that's it. That's a good place to stop because actually this is the last results before homework 1 appears in the module. So I hope you'll be ready to answer at least most of homework number 1. The deadline I think is Sunday, pero we still have one meeting before that. So we can devote probably the first hour or so of that meeting answering your questions about homework number 1. Before we go, I think maiksi lang naman yung vector spaces so we can finish the remaining 31 pages of the module in, say, 1.5 hours. All right? Bago natin i-define ano yung mga vector spaces. Tapos saka na tayo papasok sa mas advanced na linear algebra. Kasi yung fields, gagamitin ko lang siya para makapag-define ng vector spaces. Pero yung theory of fields is rich on itself, but that is not the focus of linear algebra. Focus natin talaga ay functions mula sa isang vector space papunta sa isang vector space. Pero bago natin ma-define kung ano yung vector space, kailangan natin ng field. If you're interested in studying the theory of fields, there would be some time for that in abstract algebra. So dun talaga siya pinag-aaral. But for now, I think we will leave fields as is with those properties, and then we'll go to vector spaces on Saturday. All right. So, all right. So this was a good discussion. I just hope that more people will participate next time. Thank you for the active participants today. Richard, Hazel, Aline, Sol, Ian. Pinakalimutan pa ba ako? I think Rose also answered. Hopefully others will be more participative next time. All right, pwede kayo magtanong kung merong hindi klaro. So it was a nice discussion. Enjoy the rest of the night, guys. Pahinga na kayo, and then let's meet again on probably Saturday. I'll send the schedule tomorrow. But until the next meeting, stay safe, guys, and yeah, enjoy the rest of the evening. And then send me questions if you have via email or via Moodle. All right, bye, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you po.
All right.
Thank you, sir.